guys ready? Want to go ahead and kick this off real quick? Start the stream. Come over here with me?
Yeah, I got to squeeze in.
You go right there. All right. Welcome, everybody. I think pretty much everybody here knows us, so we'll skip through.
We got new members.
Who's new?
I'm new to this one.
You've been here before. What are you talking
He's
about?
new to this one.
Oh, are you? You haven't been to Laravel one yet? Oh, well, welcome.
No, you haven't.
Yeah. Well, I'm James Keeline. I've been working with PHP since 2000. I taught some classes over at Continuing Ed for 5 years, and did some Drupal work since 2006.
How long have you been teaching there?
I did that for about 5 years, from 01 to 06.
Well, so the way I got introduced to PHP was through that program.
Okay.
Yeah, I was actually looking to get into MySQL, and some guy was there teaching, PHP and MySQL. I'm like, well, I don't know what PHP is, but it's got the MySQL piece, and I was introduced to PHP there.
And a good chance that I was going to end it there. I think there might have one or two other people.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Anybody else? First timers? First time? You guys work here, right? Yeah. So you're just like the extra. You fill the seats so it looks like it's more crowded. Way to go. You go to the PHP meetups, though, right?
I haven't.
Yeah.
I did the CARI.net. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but he just signed up for our meetup yesterday.
All right. Cool. Okay.
Welcome. Did we skip the slide where it's pictures of us?
It was there the whole time we were talking.
I'm Tom Rideout.
I'm Eric. We had this conversation. Everybody knows us.
No, we didn't.
Go. Just go to the next meetup.
You just skipped the next one.
What the hell?
As everyone here knows, we are affiliated with the SD PHP group. The next meetup is going to be Wednesday, November 11th, and
Up in North County.
up in North County. And who's presenting that one?
Tyler Brown.
Tyler Brown.
Yeah.
We'll be presenting techniques for using PHP with his mobile app that he has recently developed.
And our next Laravel meetup, we're going to move it up a week because of the holidays. So it'll be in 3 weeks, November 18th. November 18th. Hey, welcome.
Hey, that's fine.
Good. John will be doing a presentation of wrapping up your legacy code in a warm Laravel blanket. And then William's going to do a talk on custom collections. So we're looking forward to that.
As always, we need to know what you guys want to hear and learn about. We've got a Trello board where you guys can add items that you want to present yourself or that you want to hear presented on, and you can vote on those items to bring them to our attention so that they become the topic for the next meetups.
And if you want to present, that's where you can go and get ideas and get inspired on topics to talk about. Also on the Trello board, we don't talk about it much, but there are other things that the group needs that if you're into and you want to contribute to the group, it would be great. Things like graphics designs. We're still looking for like a logo if anybody's kind of into that and wants to develop a logo. That'd be fantastic. But yeah, and the key point here, and I don't really think we talk about this enough, but this is really y'all's user group, right? We're just the organizers. So if there's something you guys want to see, do, or if another approach you want to take, reach out to us, let us know, and we'll organize it. We'll make sure it happens. But this is our attempt to kind of make it a little easier for anybody who might want to do a presentation but not sure what they want to talk about. There are a few ways to communicate with us, now that I mention it. A lot of us hang out in the IRC on Freenode and SD PHP channel. We do have a Twitter handle, and as you saw previously, both Thomas and myself are pretty active on Twitter as well. The Meetup group, obviously, you guys know about that, and we do have a website out there called sdlug.com if you're interested.
So we thought we'd start off everything with the sort of the latest in news since the last time we met up. So the starter application stuff. Yeah, so we've heard Taylor talk about this for a while. He'd been talking about creating a starter application that kind of took a lot of the basics of Laravel, a lot of the principles of Laravel, migration, seeding, forms, and he's been wanting to do a real basic application that people could download, install, especially people getting started and trying to understand how these things work. So he finally released that
I believe it's a to-do list. So it's out there if you're interested. It's actually part of the Laravel website, Laravel.com website. So if you go to the Laravel docs 5.1/quick start, the application's there. It's a composer install.
Along those same lines, if you're looking just to see what the same thing looks like in different frameworks, there's a project called NoteJam, which is on GitHub, and it executes the same application in all of the different PHP frameworks that you can find out there.
Oh, that's interesting. I know that. Another thing, if you're listening to podcasts, I'm a little bit of a podcast junkie. I listen to a lot of them, a bunch of different languages. Laravel News, which is a real popular Laravel website, they just released the podcast. I think they have like 2 or 3 episodes out there now, so worth listen if you listen to podcasts.
Let's Encrypt is now browser trusted. So Let's Encrypt is a project that's not currently publicly available yet, but the ambition is to provide free SSL certificates for anyone who wants one. What this means is that the intention of the project is to get the entire web SSL encrypted so that everyone has their privacy protected, along with all the other things that come along with that.
Maybe email too?
It's out there. It's called PGP, man.
So they recently got signed with one of the biggest certificate providers, which means that all the modern browsers do respect the encryption algorithm that they're using and their keys. So hopefully we'll start seeing a more secure web soon coming from that.
It'd be fantastic. And then the last one, Homestead?
Homestead is now supporting the different public releases of PHP 7. Right now it's in PSR, not PSR, PR. RC.
RC. Yes, the release.
I think it's in RC2 now.
Yeah.
5? It's been a while.
It's due to be released next month, right?
Yeah.
November.
So the Laravel team is keeping on that really closely and making sure that Homestead is ready to go the second that it's live.
Is that a separate install of Homestead, or is it the same install?
That is a separate Homestead flag, I believe.
Cool. Any other news topics anybody want to bring up? No? Cool. And if you guys don't like this format, just let us know. I know what I did. If you guys don't like this format, just let us know.
We can't legally divorce yet.
Not yet. No, we could get married, but we can't get divorced yet. I just decided to go ahead and throw up a bunch of Laravel resources that I use on a fairly regular basis. I also published this onto our website too, so obviously you don't have to try to grab all these Twitter handles at once. I'm trying to keep this up to date, but there's the Laravel podcast, Laravel News podcast, which we talked about, Laravel News website, Laracast, Laravel Daily, and a bunch of Twitter handles here. So if you're really into Laravel, you want to make sure you stay dialed into it. These are the things you need to follow. If anybody has anything they'd like to add to this list, let me know.
It's only if you're really into Laravel.
Right.
I don't know if anyone here is. Jobs. We take sponsorships for listing job opportunities. So if anyone has a job opportunity they want to get listed on our website and on our presentations, please contact us at the San Diego Laravel on Twitter, or email us directly through many other contact methods.
Yep.
That's it for hiring.
Definitely want to thank our sponsors. CARI.net is the location you're in right now. They're providing obviously this fantastic facility. They're doing the live streaming for us. They're providing the pizzas. William and a few other guys here work for CARI. Do you want to talk about what you guys offer?
Well,
Danny, let's hear it.
Hey guys, so my name is Daniel Romero. I work out of the Guatemala operations for the company.
Guatemala?
Guatemala, yeah.
Nice.
So it's me, him, and a team of programmers down there. And we were actually introduced to the whole Laravel world through Will. And he's been our mentor, and we work with Laravel products day in and day out. So it's actually great that we're able to have the chance of getting to host a meeting. We're happy to be your host. So we're glad you're here.
Yeah, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, we're very thankful.
Of course, Diego Dev is a company myself and John run. And we have a few people we pay to do something. So
which is better, the large logo or the small?
Let's hear this.
Logo on the shirt.
Real fast. Don't think about it too much. Large or small?
Hands up for large.
I like the large one. It could be because I like black.
You like the large?
I think I agree. I like the black though.
So the black with the small logo then.
So picture the black shirt with the small logo.
Yeah.
You want to just trade shirt?
That's what I said. Yeah. It's like more like Iron Man. So everybody likes the small logo? Damn.
And I put the name of the company below the small logo.
Good.
We've got it on
there.
We've got it on the back.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I hate all of you. You're dead to me. If you do, then this is another area. If you do a job posting with us, we will include you in the sponsor list.
What does Diego Dev do?
I take some way. Oh yeah, we're a development group. We specialize in Laravel, but we don't only do Laravel projects, but we do a lot of development work, and as it turns out, a lot of operational work as well. So, all right, is that it? I got no more slides.
So yeah.
You want to kick off yours first?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's go. Okay, so Thomas is going to present his first. And we'll take a short break after Thomas's, and I'll do my talk.
Alrighty, so the title is Inside Service Providers, but we're really going to look at Laravel as just an IOC in general here. It's going to be kind of quick. If you have questions, feel free to interrupt me and ask your questions. That's the way I work. So the first thing we're going to look at is what is a service provider. A service provider is going to register things into Laravel. It's going to register event listeners, routes, a middleware, service container bindings, objects, singletons, instances of objects, stuff like that. It has a couple primary components. The first one here is the register method. Now, is this visible for everyone? So, here you can see I've got a service provider named Calculator Service Provider. And I'm simply extending the service provider object here from Laravel, and I'm saying register this singleton of Calculator within the IOC. So I'm taking an instance of the object, binding it to the container. There's also the boot method. So you can see here I've got my register method. Now in my boot method, I'm defining a view composer, which means that whenever I need to access an element of the calculator, it's available to the views without having to do any additional work in the controller that's going to be using the views. Now the important distinction here is that in a register method with a service provider, this is happening during the bootstrap process. So while you've got the system loading itself up, it's registering each provider one at a time through the register method. If my register method gets called before another service provider that I rely on, such as the view service provider here, then it will fail. So whenever you're using an external service provider to handle something within your service provider, you're going to need to register that in the boot method. The boot method is going to occur after all of the service providers have been instantiated and handled. You're not going to be able to do view composers, you're not going to be able to do route definitions, all that kind of stuff. Now, in a sort of a day-to-day Laravel programming, this is not a big deal, but if you're going to make your own package of any kind, then you're definitely going to be wanting to bind things using the standard Laravel service providers. You're going to have to do that in your boot method. Now, one thing that service providers provide is a deferred provider. So naturally you think, well, all these service providers are getting loaded up on boot time. Isn't that going to be a little heavy for the system if I don't want to use it right now? The answer to that is to defer it. So you basically set a method here that says, well, this object provides this service, and then set the defer value to true. And when Laravel sees your service provider in the list, instead of registering and booting it, it just says, mental note, When someone wants this, then I register and boot it. But until then, I'm just aware that it exists. It's a thing that I can call. Does that make sense? So this is a way that you can sort of lighten up the load on your system on a page load by page load basis if your service provider is not necessary on a per page basis. And that's really it for a service provider. You can do work inside of it, but really all you're doing is loading an object, establishing some really simple stuff like view controllers and routes, and then making it available to Laravel itself. Now, making it available to Laravel means getting inside the service container. The service container is what Laravel is. Laravel at its core, if you strip away all of the really nice fancy things that are included in it, is just a service container. It's an IOC container. So in Laravel you can call really simply app and then the object that you want. This accesses the service container and gives you what you're requesting. This is the most basic way of accessing the Laravel service container. The way that most people in Laravel use it is by binding it to a constructor or binding it to a method instantiation. So when I say here, I want store calculator as calc, then the IOC container, the service container, will say, find me this object. If it's bound in some way by a service provider, take that binding, attach it to this variable, pass this variable into the constructor, make it available to the object here.
What is IOC?
IOC stands for inversion of thingy, control. IOC is a sort of a reverse lookup for an object. So in a non-IOC environment, when you say, I want this, it just gives you that. You say, I want a new instance of a class. In an IOC environment, when you say, I want person, then the environment says, well, when he says person, he means Eric. And so it passes the Eric object to me instead. So it's a rule system for resolving dependencies. Now there are several different binding types. We're back into your service provider here. What you can do. Now, a basic binding simply says, if you ask for the store calculator, I'll give you the calculator. Okay, this is a really simple closure. You can obviously have a more complex closure which uses config calls and things like that, or builds objects together. But in these simple examples, if you want a store calculator, I'll give you the calculator object. A singleton looks almost exactly the same, but every other time you ask for that store calculator, it gives you the same object back again. So it'll say, hey, he's already looked for a store calculator before, give him the same calculator again. So this line here, new calculator, only gets executed the first time. Any subsequent call to the store calculator will call the already existing object. Instance binding is very similar to singleton binding, where the instance binding says, oh hey, you've defined your variable outside of your closure. You can just pass that variable in as an instance of an object. And then finally, interface binding, which is one of the most common ways of using these service containers, which says, if somebody asks for this interface, provide them this object. This is really common because this is how testing is done in the Laravel environment. So if I'm running in my production environment, I want to return, of course, the real object. But if I'm running in my test environments and I want to do PHP unit, I'm going to return a mock model instead of the actual model, or a mock provider. Now, this is where we start to get more advanced, is contextual binding. And this is something that the actual Laravel docs don't get into a whole lot. But let's say I'm running a store where employees who are logged in have a very specially calculated rate. I don't want to rewrite the entire system to account for a different calculator object. I just want to say, hey, if they're an employee and they're calling through the employee shop controller, then give them the employee calculator. So the application, when the shop controller needs the store calculator, give them the calculator. When the application is the employee shop controller and they need the store calculator, call the calculator with the argument of employee. So there's a lot of flexibility that you can build into this where you're calling the same thing, but you're not calling the same thing. This is a really slippery slope area to get into. Make sure that you're being smart if and when you're doing it. Particularly helpful when you have, again, unit testing in place where you've got a mock model that needs a mock model that needs a mock model. Now, tagging is a really powerful feature of the service container that doesn't get a lot of attention. The documentation gives reporting as an example, which makes a really good example, but unfortunately I had already painted my way into a corner with this. But when you're binding your objects, when you're done binding your different objects here, you can tag them together and say, okay, these bindings represent the category of calculator. So if I want all the calculator objects, then I can just say, give me all the objects tagged as calculators. So in reporting, if you have bar chart, pie chart, Gantt chart, line chart, if you have all these different service providers that provide you charting methods for all these same things, and they're compatible with the same interface, then tag them all together. And then call the tag, process them all together as a collection of services that are being provided. Really strong functionality, but it does have that mental overhead to really think it out beforehand to say, oh, I am doing this with these different objects of the same type. And finally, container events. In your container, you can call a simple event the same way that your models fire events for saving and creating and deleting. When your container is resolving to a specific class, you can call a closure. So if someone is accessing the ultra-secure admin portion of your website, and that uses a service provider that you consider dangerous or highly secure, then send an event to it. Say, hey, this functionality, but it exists so that you can piggyback on packages that already exist that don't. This person hit this container or just log this activity when it happens, when they hit a method in this container. Not particularly powerful functionality, but it exists so that you can piggyback on packages that already exist that don't have this functionality. You can easily take a service provider that exists and attach this to a provider to add your own functionality for view composers, whatever else you have. So if you have something that draws a login form for you and your login form is a 3-piece form, not a 2-piece form, then use the resolving to bind additional functionality to it. That's it. That's all there is for service containers. It's short but complex.
Back up on my slide. Does resolving have to do you specifically, or is it resolving that class out of the guide?
Complicated and
Back up on my slide. Does resolving have to do you specifically, or is it resolving that class out of the IOC?
when the IOC resolves the calculator class, then it calls that closure.
So it doesn't necessarily have to
No. And I have it here in the boot method of a service provider, but you can actually attach outside of the service provider as long as it's getting called before the service provider gets resolved. So, any questions?
Have you built a service provider?
I have. I've built a couple.
What did you find challenging about it?
Figuring out where things go. You know, it's the same problem that you see with controllers, where you want to put all your code into one place until you go, okay, well, now I got to refactor it backwards, and this really belongs in its own thing. And deciphering the service providers that come with Laravel, because Laravel, you know, naturally does it the right way. So if you go into the Laravel vendor directory and go into Laravel code, you can go through all the service providers and see what it is they're doing and how they're doing it. And it does things with the dot notation instead of with the slash notation, and it gets confusing quickly, but it's worth spending the time to dig into and see how they're doing it, because service providers are the real strength of the Laravel framework, and if you're not using them, you're kind of only using the Laravel framework service providers that are just given to you by default.
So what would they think to you, like when you say, okay, I'm going to create a service provider for this functionality?
If I think if I could describe it as a tangible thing, the reason I used calculator is because it's a thing, it's a noun, and to me a service provider is a noun. So when I'm building a receipt for a customer, that's a noun. When I'm putting money into a till or cashing out to Stripe, for example, that's a thing. So you know, if you have an object for something, then it should probably have its own service provider, where you just say this is an object that's available to the system, and by putting it in a service provider, you're saying the system inherently, this object is inherently part of the system. Does that make sense?
One thing I would encourage you, if you start using service providers a lot, is to make sure you check out the config/compile .php file, which is basically contains an array where you can list out additional classes, and when you deploy a low application, anything that is listed in that array, it will compile that class into a single gigantic class that gets loaded with everything else, so kind of bypasses the compose on a little bit. But it's the difference of I've seen applications that have like 70 to 80 service providers, so it's the difference of loading 70 to 80 different products. This is one. So it can greatly speed up your application. If you start doing things the right way, you start splitting things out into one file and stuff to manually segment your code the way it's supposed to be done. You start seeing performance drawbacks because of that, but that's how you fix that.
I thought 5.1 auto-compiled service providers now.
Anything that it can detect, yes. But if you start doing any of the fancy resolving of stuff,
Yeah.
things like that, it might not get them. So being explicit is better than implicit.
I put this link up here because this is the missing manual for the Laravel service provider and service container. You know, like I said before, Laravel is at its core just a service provider or an IOC container. So all of its strengths and weaknesses come from that very core component of it. And that includes things like rebinding service providers. And I think rebounding is the term for accessing rebinded service. There's crazy stuff going on. It's really not in the documentation. but it's a really good foundation to understand what's going on inside Laravel itself as a core component, and this is a free, easily readable doc on various functions in Laravel.
So we'll go ahead. We'll take about a 5-minute break here, real fast. If you want to take a bio break or grab some more food, more sodas back there. Also, as a reminder, we will post our slides and the video up on our website. We do it on the SDPHP website as well. So it's out there. You can watch it again, and you'll get a pic of the slides. So we'll take a quick 5-minute break, and then I'll kick off my presentation. I'm Eric.
Tony, I mentioned at the Laravel.
The conference.
Yeah.
Tom was there. How's good? You were Jeopardy, right?
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Finally made it out, huh?
Yeah, I finally did. I think I'm gonna start coming to more of them. I just last time, my wife just had a baby about 4.5 months ago.
Congratulations.
So, thank you.
I assume it's yours.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm just. I think last time I was like, oh, I really want to make it, and then something came up.
Yeah.
So, glad that I finally.
I'm glad you did too. I'm glad to have you here. You had a partner with you too, didn't you?
Yeah, Nathan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where's he at?
He is at home, I think, right now.
Bastard.
Yeah. I'm trying to hit him up, and then even the CEO of the company that I work for too, he wanted to come to this too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What was that?
The control group.
Oh, the control. Oh, you're part of the control group. I think he sent me a message on Meetup, and I replied, but he never replied back. Caitlin or Chris?
Chris Keyback.
Chris Keyback. Yeah. I sent him. Like I said, there's a little messaging app within Meetup.
Oh, okay.
He sent me a note, and I replied to him, but he never replied back. I'm like, well, I don't know if he didn't get it or got it or what, but yeah.
Yeah, he's usually pretty busy.
Yeah.
But
I checked out the website, man. That place looks insane.
Oh yeah. It's fun. It's a fun place to work.
I'm like, I'm just gonna drop by and just hang out there. They don't even have to pay me. I just act like I work there.
We have a PV office, and we have one in Little Italy, and then there's another one that's right next to the airport that they're building out. That it's
Why so close to each other?
They're just expanding, hiring new people, and then they end up growing out of one place, and then go into another, and they grew out of that one. So,
cool, very cool. Yeah. Excellent, man. Well, I'm glad you made it.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I plan on coming to a lot more.
Cool.
You want to direct me something?
Yeah. Right out to the right. It's on the right hand side.
Oh, thank you.
Is that readable? Can you see that, or should I make it bigger? I think I'm just gonna go ahead. Yeah, I think so. I'm just gonna change my resolution. Yeah, that's actually a good point. I should really change that, huh? I should change it to something white. No, it's never too late. Oh, let's see. The fonts. Here we go. So I'm doing material. I don't know which one of these is light here. That's a little better. Should be some white ones here, right? Dracula sounds like it's going to be dark. Oh, here we go. Let's see if we can get a light. There we go. Maybe make the fonts bigger. little easier to read. Yeah, I get you. Although, I gotta be honest with you, that white is freaking me out a little bit here. Let's see if I can. Let me just see if that goes back to dark of it. What that looks like. Oh man, that takes everything dark. Alright. Oh, this whole thing went back, huh? Damn. Yeah, I think that's good enough. Let me change that font size. Actually, I gotta go back to the copy I made. Yeah, I tried that. Actually, ever since I installed that material design, presentation mode doesn't work. Let me try again though. Yeah, see, it does. I don't know if it's the Vim plugin I got or what. Alright, it's gonna have to be that. Alright, everybody back? I'm gonna kick this off. How are we doing on time? 7:45. This isn't going to be a long one. Okay. All right. So this presentation is kind of a cheat. It's a perfect example of what we're always saying. If you want to do a presentation, you don't have to be an expert on the topic you're talking about. So this presentation is pretty much a straight up ripoff of a tutorial I found online for this pusher service. I looked at it and I'm like, hey, that's pretty cool. I think I want to try that, and figured I'd go ahead and put a presentation together for it. So, not an expert in this. It's a topic that interests me a lot, but I won't be able to answer a lot of questions about the service, but maybe a few. So, using Laravel and Pusher, building real-time applications. Everybody likes real-time applications. I mean, everybody's doing them now, right? But in the PHP world, it's a little difficult. So, Pusher is a hosted service that helps add real-time data functionality to web and mobile apps. Located at pusher.com, pretty straightforward. See if I got a good place to talk about this. So this kind of talks a little bit about what Pusher does. The big takeaway here that you really need to be aware of is Pusher's not a data store. It doesn't replace a database. It doesn't replace a NoSQL database or a data set. All Pusher's doing is listening for events and pushing it out to subscribers. That's all it does. It doesn't hold on to the data. It's strictly a pass-through. And that's pretty much what this is. The one interesting piece to take away from this, though, is that it does work over WebSockets wherever possible. When it can't work off WebSockets, it'll fall back on HTTP-based connectivity. If there are ways to do this yourself. I've actually done a presentation on this before, and I'll reference that at the end of this presentation. But this is the type of stuff that becomes a headache as an operations guy. You don't want to manage this additional service and how all this is working. So Pusher, its goal is to take that off your hands. With my soda over there. Damn it. Where would I use Pusher? Again, anywhere you're trying to do real-time application, just anything, notifications, chat, anything like that, live streams. Thank you very much, appreciate it. So yeah, we all know what those are. Pusher is a paid service. It's not very clear when you go to the site, but if you look at the very bottom, they do offer a free account. It's a sandbox account. So if you're just trying out the service, or if you just want to do a presentation on the service, that's what you sign up for. That's what I signed up for. The one real nice thing about Pusher that you don't typically get with your roll your own solutions is that it does have a dashboard. And this is an example of the dashboard. And the dashboard will give you real-time analytics of what's going on with your application. We're going to see an example of this here because I'm going to be doing a lot of hands-on stuff because I just didn't feel like doing all those screenshots. You know, with these little 3 pieces of information here, this is pretty much all you need for your PHP application, for your JavaScript, anything that's going to be interacting with the Pusher service. You just need those 3 pieces of information for credentials. Okay, the fundamentals of Pusher. It's just, you just have to get your head around the different concepts that it references. So it has channels, which are just basically identifiers, right? It's a chat channel or an activity channel. It's just what you're grouping things as. You have events, which represents something happening to that data. So something's happened in a channel that those are the events. The event itself is the payload. So it's a posted message, it's a notification. That would be the event. Laravel setup, again, pretty much straightforward, out of the box. Laravel, new, project name. You go to your .env file, you create 3 variables here, push your app, ID, push your key, push your secret. Those are the 3 things that we got off our dashboard earlier. That's all you got to do. So the really cool thing about Laravel is Laravel has events, and Pusher is actually the default event manager in Laravel. So the easy way of doing this is by using that existing implementation. And I think that's all I say here, right? Laravel 5.1 comes with the default Pusher event broadcaster, which will take advantage of this. Okay, so the funny thing is, and this is the code, and yeah, this dark theme doesn't really work, but this is the code to fire an event, to test an event. When I first did this, I couldn't get it working. I'm not sure what I did wrong. So there's another method that I go with that we're going to touch on, and it's actually the approach the tutorial went down. So I was fortunate in that. But after I'd gone through the tutorial, I'm like, man, why couldn't I get the basic events working? And I kind of backtracked. And the second time I implemented it, it worked just fine. So I must have fat fingered something the first time. But so it does work out of the box, but you don't go that route. The second way you can do it is through a bridge, and this is a composer package. They have the service provider for Laravel, but I don't think it has to be a Laravel application. Obviously, ours is. You just do your composer require, you register the service provider, and you do an artisan vendor publish, which publishes a config file, which again will just reference the keys we defined earlier in our .env file. And that's it. So now we're going to end up using the Laravel the Pusher bridge. when we do this, the code here on the left is pretty much the same code I had for the events, but this is leveraging the app make Pusher, which we talked a little bit about just in Thomas's service provider containers. So when you run this little test here and you hit this route, immediately in real time it'll show up in your dashboard. Again, we're going to see an example of this here real soon. This kind of goes into a little bit of the differences between events and bridges. The pro to the event is that it abstracts away, the event broadcasting abstracts away the fact that you're using Pusher. So if you want to exchange that for another service, it becomes a lot easier. It's a lot more like your data stores, right? And when you use Eloquent, whether it's MySQL or Postgres, the idea is that you should be able to swap those out, should be abstracted away from your application. The bad part is it doesn't take advantage of some of the customization that Pusher adds to the bridge, which obviously the bridge does do. So depending on how you're using it and how much you're going to use it, you can kind of make the decision for yourself whether or not you want to use event broadcasting or bridge. I would probably stick with the bridge for now, but I don't know. That's just me. Because this is real time, and we all know we're working in PHP, things don't happen necessarily in real time. So there is JavaScript involved. Again, very, very simple implementation. This is just subscribing to a channel, and you bind that channel, and when it sees any activity on that channel, it'll do a pop-up here of the text from that event. We'll see an example of this as well. And this is what it's going to look like in the dashboard. So that's all the slides I have. Well, I got more later, but we're gonna get into what the code looks like. So there's a couple tutorials on Pusher's website specifically for Laravel. There's like a notification tutorial, activity stream tutorial, and there was one more. I forget what it was. We went with the activity stream because I just like that type of stuff. The key. Well, first thing, let's look at the route. So this top part here is just the test stuff, and really not that interesting. The tutorial did walk you through installing Socialite and authenticating through GitHub. That's just used as part of the activity stream to associate a user to things being posted. Not really anything important. That's why that's there. So activities. So we have the one route activities that talks to the activities controller. Again, we just do an app make for the pusher. We get our user from the session, and then for the index, all we're going to do is we're going to bind all that stuff up, and we're going to create a trigger to the pusher service, and we'll view activities. At this point, PHP is kind of out of the loop. The page is going to sit there, and we're going to kick in with our blade where we've implemented some JavaScript. The JavaScript is going to listen for activities on the channel. Our PHP and Laravel won't kick in again until somebody does a post. And then obviously, when somebody does a post, it's going to connect back to the pusher service, and it's going to throw that post out to the pusher service, which will then in turn broadcast it to everybody else who's subscribed. So that's all our PHP is doing. And if you're curious, let's see, activities, bleed. So there's just like the composer package for PHP. There's pusher right here. There's a pusher JavaScript libraries that they offer to make for your interaction. Let's see. Let's get down to the bottom. So yeah, they have a bunch of stuff here, but the important stuff comes down here to add activity. Yeah, where is it? Yeah, I think that's really the big piece. So what this is doing is the JavaScript is listening on the channel. When it sees new activity, it's going to grab it and it's going to post it to the page without the user having to do any refreshing or anything like that. What that looks like, let's take a look, shall we? So let's go ahead and pull out the pusher dashboard here. And we'll go ahead and clear it out. I was playing with the web hooks as well. I couldn't get the web hooks working, unfortunately. So this is the sample app, and I've already logged in with GitHub. Thomas was nice enough to log into another browser with GitHub, so we'll see all of that. But what we'll see is if you watch over here, when we do a refresh, you'll see this page bind back to the channel. So we hit refresh here, and boom. So it disconnected and it's reconnected, and now it's subscribed to the channel activities, which is what we're working on. So we can type in some activity here, SD lug, hit enter, and if you come over here, you'll be able to see within the payload itself. You can actually drop this down and see post by Eric. This is my avatar and the text that was posted. It shows up here. That's all fine. I can come over here. If I want to, I can say, let's see, was it activities or activities? I forget what it was. It wasn't a new message. You can push stuff out here. I'm not going to go through this right now. Let's get another browser open. So, damn, yeah. So I had Thomas logged in already. So this is Thomas on the right-hand side, and again, he posts something, and it was working a lot faster earlier. Why is that not entering? Well, this is disappointing. Interesting. Well, let's see. That's okay. I have another account. Let's see if this one works. It does not. Oh, I wonder if I have to rebind to it. Let me see. Yeah, let's pop. Let's just see if we see that bind. We do. There we go. Oh, that's because I hit enter too fast there. Sorry about that, guys. Damn it. I did have an issue earlier where that kept happening. So
is Pusher, if you had 100 people send 100 messages, Pusher has a record of 10,000 messages.
Well, no, it doesn't. So it doesn't hold on to it. Again, it's not data storage. So ideally, you may even use this with with some sort of data store backend where you're storing the messages. All Push is going to do is to pub sub, right? It's going to publish anything it gets and handle anybody who's subscribed to that channel.
So like multitasking?
Multi what? Sure, I guess if that's what you. Oh, there you go. That's working. I just had to refresh. Yeah, and so that's it. That's really all it does. It's a live, either WebSocket or HTTP. But the idea is, so again, the cool thing about this is because it's so easy to implement. If I can see where I'm at. If I come over here to the home page, view source. I have right here at the bottom, if you can see this. So I have this page actually listening to the channel as well. It doesn't do anything. There's no way to do a post, but it's just listening. And if somebody does do a post, it will alert me. So imagine you have like a little notification window or something on here. You have something pop up, but if somebody comes over here and types, they're sending a chat over on this other window, I get the pop up with the message. So you can distribute this throughout your application. Obviously, have it subscribed to the channel. If this was an email system or something like that, it would pop up and let them know that there's a new message for them.
So can you secure the channel? Have certain people subscribe to channels, or is that?
Well, so there's nothing within Pusher to do that, but that's something you would manage within your application. Damn. Is there a way to secure the channels? No, there's nothing in Pusher to allow you to secure the channels within Pusher, but I imagine that's something you would handle within your application itself. Does that answer your question? So you can't subscribe to the channel without the keys, right? You have your keys that you have to have. So nobody can just make a call to your channel and see what's going on. There's that level of security. But if you only wanted, if you only wanted William to be able to get notifications from one channel, but Jason get notification from all channels, that would have to be logic you have within your application.
So does
So does that mean that the subscriber is sending information to the publisher? I'm not sure I follow, but you as an individual, you're not it's not working off the credentials, right? It's strictly programmatically, is this event something that you want published? Does that make sense? I mean, you're doing it all within. I mean, if I go back, shoot, that's where I want to go.
JavaScript isn't pushing, super pushing.
No, not in this.
JavaScript is posting back to the Laravel app, which is pushing.
Right, so the JavaScript doesn't push to pusher. In these examples, JavaScript is only subscribing. There is a Node library, so if you have a Node application, obviously you can push, but there's no just JavaScript to push that I'm aware of. There may be. I didn't look that deep into the JavaScript library. It may be there. I'm just not aware of it.
Would it be unusual to have like hundreds of channels, like one channel per, like if you're building a messaging app?
Yeah. So would it be odd to have a ton of channels? No, I don't think it would be odd at all. Well, I don't think I would have a channel like per conversation. Maybe you would. I actually can't see why you wouldn't.
Cast discussions use Pusher. That's how he does it. If you're actually on a post and someone replies, you get that instant notification.
Oh, that's interesting. So,
I'm pretty sure they use that each discussion as its own channel.
yeah. So let me go ahead and kick through the rest of this because you actually bring up a good point. I think I only have a couple more slides here. So there are ways to roll your own, and there are other solutions out there. Laracast just released a new one on Socket.io, and actually when I was doing my research on this one, he did have one on Pusher. I had already done my presentation, so I didn't watch it. But there is Socket.io, which is another service out there. To roll your own, there's Ratchet and React PHP, which again, this is the one I had done a presentation on months ago for SDPHP. It's pretty much the exact same presentation, where except instead of Pusher, you establish your own Pusher service using these libraries. Rethink DB. I put out on Twitter that I was putting together this presentation on Pusher, and somebody had mentioned Rethink DB. And Pusher has a tutorial on integrating their Pusher application with Rethink DB. There's probably going to be a presentation on this sometime in the future. I looked into this a lot. Rethink DB has this change feed functionality that they just released, which looks very similar to Pusher. You just say, it sits there. It basically makes a call to it. So Rethink DB is a data store. It's a schemaless NoSQL data store, and with this change feed functionality, it allows you to make a call to a query like you're doing a select statement, and you just say select star from users, and it waits for the results, and it says, okay, keep this request open. Next time there's a new user, give it to me. And it seems very similar to a lot of these pub/sub sort of solutions. PHP also has a socket server built in. With my React PHP presentation, I did an example of that, and it's not very pretty, but it works. And of course, there's a lot of resources out there. Laracast. So there's Laravel Pusher. So this top one here is the tutorial that we just walked through. There's a ton of tutorials out there on Pusher's website. Laracast had 2 really good tutorials. I only watched the Pusher one about halfway through, so you may be right. It was about a year old, but everything still seemed very, very valid. And then just last week, or it might have even been this week, I think it was last week, he released this new one on Socket.io, which is, again, very similar to Pusher. That's it. Okay, questions? Comments, complaints? Fantastic, thank you. All right, how are we doing with time? Cool. So we got time, feel free to socialize. Mr. William, Do we have tours being offered today, or?
We do have tools being offered.
Okay, if you have closed-toed shoes, which
That's no longer required.
are no longer a problem, if
We
you
just need to sign it away. If you get injured, it's not our fault.
and you like servers, William will be more than happy to take you on a tour of the CARI.net data center.